Alessia burst into the dimly lit restaurant on Via Monte Napoleone, her laughter slicing through the murmur of conversations like a beam of sunlight breaking through Milanese fog. The group at the corner table, Marta, her childhood confidant with the no-nonsense bob haircut, Sophia, the bubbly artist always sketching on napkins, and a couple of lingering acquaintances from their university days in Bologna, turned in unison, their expressions brightening as if she'd flipped a switch. Alessia was radiant that evening. Her cheeks flushed a soft rose from the crisp autumn air outside, her dark eyes sparkling under the warm glow of the antique pendant lamps that dangled like forgotten jewels from the ceiling. She wore a simple black dress that hugged her curves just enough to turn heads, but it was her energy that commanded the room. "You won't believe it," she announced breathlessly, sliding into the empty chair with a dramatic flourish that sent her scarf fluttering to the floor. She didn't bother picking it up. Instead, she leaned forward, elbows on the table, her voice bubbling with excitement. "I met him last night at that gallery opening downtown. Luca, tall, brooding, with hands that could sculpt marble from thin air. He looked at me like I was the only piece of art in the entire exhibition. We talked for hours about abstract expressionism, and he even quoted Rothko. Can you imagine?" Marta, ever the skeptic, raised a perfectly arched eyebrow, her fork hovering midair over a half-eaten plate of risotto alla Milanese. The saffron-infused rice gleamed under the light, but Marta's focus was on her friend. "Another one? Didn't you just end things with Matteo literally last week? The guy from the coffee shop?" Her tone was laced with concern, not judgment, at least not yet. But Alessia waved her off with a dismissive flick of her wrist, already diving deeper into the retelling, her words painting vivid pictures of stolen glances and whispered promises. The friends exchanged subtle glances across the table, a silent acknowledgement of the pattern they'd all witnessed too many times. Sophia chuckled softly, but there was a hint of weariness in it. The evening unfolded like so many before it, buoyed entirely by Alessia's infectious enthusiasm. She only truly came alive in moments like these, when there was a hymn to anchor her wandering spirit, to give her existence shape and color. Without that tether, she faded into the background, becoming a mere silhouette in her own narrative, a ghost haunting the edges of life. As the wine flowed and plates of antipasti circulated, Alessia dominated the conversation, her stories weaving in and out like threads in a tapestry. But beneath the surface sparkle, there was a fragility, a quiet desperation that her friends had learned to recognize. Later, as the waiter cleared the empty plates and brought out tiny cups of espresso, Alessia absent-mindedly pulled out her small silver compact mirror from her purse. It was a vintage trinket she'd stumbled upon in a dusty flea market in Rome years ago, its surface etched with faint floral patterns that caught the light just so. She flipped it open, not out of vanity, but as if to confirm her own reflection, to assure herself that she still existed in the world. The mirror gleamed, flashing like a distant signal fire in the night. In the recesses of her mind, a familiar melody began to hum unbidden, that old Italian ballad, Amore mio, the one her grandmother used to sing on lazy summer afternoons. It was her anthem, her soothing lullaby, playing on repeat during those rare, blissful nights when love felt eternal. The song wrapped around her like a warm embrace, reminding her that love was her rhythm, her pulse, her very reason for being. But highs like these were fleeting, fragile things. That very night, after bidding her friends goodbye with air kisses and promises to text, Alessia returned to her cluttered apartment overlooking the bustling streets of Milan's Navili district. The canals below shimmered under the streetlights, alive with the laughter of late-night revelers. But inside, the space felt oppressively quiet. She kicked off her heels, letting them clatter against the hardwood floor, and sank onto the worn sofa. Scrolling through her phone with trembling fingers, her heart raced at Luca's delayed reply to her goodnight message. The screen glowed mockingly in the dim room, each passing minute amplifying her anxiety. Without someone, I become noise, she thought, the words looping in her head like a broken record, a self-inflicted curse that had haunted her for as long as she could remember. She tossed the phone aside in frustration and fixed her gaze on the empty chair across from her small kitchen table. Its wooden frame, scarred from years of use, stood there like a silent sentinel, mocking her solitude with its unwavering emptiness. The memory of Diego crashed over her then, uninvited and sharp as a jagged blade. It had been exactly 6 months since their final, explosive breakup, a timeline she tracked with morbid precision on her calendar. They'd shared 2 tumultuous years together, her longest relationship by far, filled with passionate highs and devastating lows. Diego wasn't a villain. He was kind, steady, an architect with dreams of building sustainable homes in the countryside. But her constant, suffocating need for reassurance had worn him down, eroded the foundation of what they had. "Alessia, I can't be your everything," he'd said that fateful evening, his voice cracking like brittle glass as he packed his bags into neat stacks by the door. The apartment had felt like a war zone then, clothes strewn about, half-empty wine glasses teetering on the edge of the counter. She'd screamed in response, her voice raw with pain, hurling her purse at the wall with a force that sent its contents scattering like shrapnel. "The world punishes me for loving too much." The words had echoed off the walls, hanging in the air long after he'd left. In the days that followed, her friends had rallied around her, as they always did. Phone calls poured in, offers of coffee dates and shoulders to cry on. Marta had shown up with gelato and tissues, Sophia with a playlist of empowering anthems. But Alessia had pushed them all away, retreating into her shell, only to emerge chasing the next fleeting connection. It was her pattern, etched deep into her soul. Love as salvation, solitude as damnation. Marta had confronted her the very next morning, brewing strong coffee in Alessia's chaotic kitchen amid the remnants of the previous night's chaos. The aroma of espresso filled the air, grounding yet bittersweet. "You can't keep living like this, Alessia," Marta had said firmly, her eyes kind but shadowed with exhaustion from years of these cycles. "You're losing yourself, and you're losing us in the process. Every time you dive into a new romance, we become afterthoughts." Alessia had laughed it off then, her cynicism a shield against the truth. "What else is there, Marta? Solitude? Emptiness? No thanks. I'll take the chaos over that void any day." But deep down, in the quiet corners of her heart, the question gnawed at her. Could she ever break free from this relentless pursuit of love? Or was it destined to be her only path, her inescapable fate? The cycles of hope and heartbreak blurred into a relentless, exhausting montage, each one bleeding into the next like watercolors on wet paper. After Luca ghosted her after just a week, claiming he was too busy with his art commissions, though Alessia suspected it was her intensity that scared him off, she didn't pause to grieve. Instead, she plunged headfirst into the arms of the next suitor, Giovanni, the charming barista from the cafe down the street. He had a smile that could melt ice, dimples that appeared like magic when he laughed, and a way of making her feel seen in a world that often overlooked her. Their romance ignited quickly, a spark turning into a blaze. They spent lazy afternoons wandering the cobblestone streets of Brera, hand in hand, stopping at hidden gelaterias where the flavors burst on her tongue like forgotten dreams: pistachio, stracciatella, limone. Evenings found them dancing in crowded clubs, bodies pressed close under pulsing strobe lights, the bass thumping in sync with her racing heartbeat. Amore Mio would play from her carefully curated playlist as they stumbled back to her apartment, her laughter filling the night air like confetti. In those moments, Alessia felt whole, vibrant, alive. Giovanni whispered sweet nothings in her ear, promises of forever that she clung to like lifelines. But inevitability crept in, as it always did. Giovanni began to pull away after a month, his texts growing sporadic, his excuses flimsy. "Your passion is overwhelming," he admitted one rainy afternoon over cappuccinos, his eyes avoiding hers. "I need space to breathe." The breakup was swift, a clean cut that left her bleeding internally. Alone once more, Alessia retreated to her apartment, marking the date on her wall calendar with a trembling hand. She crossed out the days of fleeting joy with a thick red pen, the page transforming into a battlefield of strikes and scars, each one a testament to her repeated failures. The toll extended beyond her heart. Work bore the brunt of her unraveling. She had once thrived on tight deadlines and bursts of inspiration, her portfolio a colorful array of logos, posters, and digital art that captured the essence of Milan's vibrant creative scene. But solitude drained her like a leaking faucet, leaving her creativity parched. She missed a major client pitch for a fashion brand's rebranding campaign, arriving late to the virtual meeting with smudged mascara from a sleepless night of tears and self-doubt. Her laptop screen glared back at her, the unfinished designs mocking her disarray. "I'm so sorry," she murmured into the phone to her exasperated boss, her voice barely above a whisper. "Personal issues. It's been a rough week." The contract slipped away to a more reliable competitor, another opportunity lost to the void. Her social circle frayed at the edges, threads pulling loose one by one. At Sophia's birthday party, in a trendy rooftop bar overlooking the Duomo spires, Alessia arrived 2 hours late, breathless and disheveled from a date that had soured midway through. The man, some forgettable app match, had bailed after sensing her desperation. "He ghosted me right in the middle of dinner," she confessed to the group, collapsing into a chair and expecting the usual wave of sympathy. Instead, Sophia let out a long sigh, her party hat askew. "We waited for you, Alessia. Again. This is the 3rd time this month." The laughter that followed was forced, the atmosphere tainted. The group chat, once buzzing with memes and plans, fell eerily quiet in the days after. Invitations dwindled to polite suggestions, then nothing. Marta made one last valiant effort, pulling Alessia aside during a quiet afternoon at their favorite cafe near the Sforza castle. The outdoor tables were dappled with sunlight filtering through plane trees, but the mood was heavy. Over steaming lattes, Marta laid it out plainly, her voice steady and unflinching. "We're not your backup plan, Alessia. We love you, but we can't keep picking up the pieces every time a guy lets you down. I won't be your lifeguard if you refuse to learn how to swim on your own." The words stung like salt in an open wound, but Alessia bristled defensively, her charm twisting into something sharper, more barbed. "You don't get it, Marta," she retorted, her eyes flashing with a mix of anger and fear. "Without him, without anyone, I'm nothing but static, white noise in a silent room. The world punishes me for daring to love this much." She stormed out, the chair scraping harshly against the pavement, leaving her half-finished coffee to grow cold. The rain-slicked streets of Milan reflected her fractured self in every puddle she splashed through, distorting her image into something unrecognizable. That night, drowning her sorrows in a haze of cheap red wine at a dimly lit bar in the Isola district, Alessia confronted a stranger who had the audacity to flirt half-heartedly. He was handsome enough, with tousled hair and a casual smile, but her mood was volatile. "What, am I not enough for you?" she snapped when he hesitated, her words slurring into unintended cruelty. The man backed away slowly, hands raised in surrender, leaving her alone at the bar with the echoing thump of music that now felt like a hammer to her skull. In her fury, she fumbled with her purse, and the silver compact mirror tumbled out, cracking against the sticky floor. She picked it up, staring at the splintered glass, her reflection now distorted into a mosaic of broken pieces. Why does the world punish me? The thought looped endlessly, a relentless mantra that offered no solace. The true turning point arrived unexpectedly, in the form of a late-night phone call from Diego. His voice, familiar yet distant, crackled over the line from Rome, where he'd relocated for a new job. "I'm engaged, Alessia," he said gently, without malice, as if delivering news of the weather. "To someone who doesn't need me to complete her, who's whole on her own." The words were a tidal wave, crashing over her and pulling her under. For the first time, the void she'd always feared wasn't some abstract concept. It was tangible, a gaping chasm she'd excavated with her own hands. She paced her apartment afterward, the walls seeming to close in like a vice, the empty chair at the kitchen table a silent, accusatory presence. Dust motes danced lazily in the fading evening light streaming through the windows, beautiful in their indifference, untouched by her turmoil. Desperation reached its zenith in the days that followed. Alessia chased after a one-night stand from weeks prior, a fleeting encounter with a musician named Paolo, showing up unannounced at his doorstep in the pouring rain, her makeup running in dark rivulets down her face. "Please," she whispered through chattering teeth, humiliation burning hotter than any fever. "Give me another chance. I need this. I need you." He shut the door softly, his expression one of pity rather than anger, a quiet rejection that cut deeper than any shout. Her friend's final withdrawal came via a terse group message that lit up her phone like a funeral pyre. "We love you, Alessia, but we can't keep watching you destroy yourself like this. Take care." Marta was the last to go silent, her profile picture staring back accusingly from the screen. In the profound depths of that endless night, Alessia hit rock bottom. The apartment echoed with her ragged sobs, the city lights outside her window casting a mocking, ethereal glow across the room. She curled up on the cold tile floor of her bathroom, the broken mirror clutched in her trembling hand like a talisman. Sensory overload assaulted her, the chill seeping through her skin, the distant hum of traffic like a far-off roar, the bitter, metallic taste of tears on her lips. Without someone, I become noise. But this time, the phrase didn't ring as truth. It felt like a heavy chain, binding her to a cycle she suddenly, desperately wanted to break. Alessia stood before the full-length mirror in her bedroom the next morning, the cracked compact discarded on the cluttered dresser like a relic from a past life. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting long shadows across the floor. Fragments of her history flickered in her mind's eye. A poignant childhood memory of her mother, Anna, whose love had always been cold and conditional, doled out in measured portions after her father's abrupt abandonment when Alessia was just 7. Anna, with her stern gaze and tightly pinned hair, had whispered once during a rare moment of vulnerability, clutching her daughter too tightly. "Love is what keeps you safe in this cruel world, Bambina. Without it, you're adrift." It wasn't an excuse for Alessia's patterns, merely an echo of inherited fear, a blueprint passed down through generations of unspoken pain. "I've been running from nothing all this time," Alessia thought, the realization crashing over her like a cold wave, raw and unyielding. The punishment isn't the world's doing, it's mine. I've built this prison with my own hands. Tears welled up anew, but they were different now, cleansing rather than drowning. The climax unfolded not in grand drama or explosive confrontation, but in the quiet sanctity of decision. She could continue waiting for the next hymn to swoop in and patch her fractured soul, perpetuating the cycle of dependency. Or she could embrace the terrifying unknown ache of self-sufficiency, stitching her wounds with her own thread. The choice hung in the air like a suspended breath, two paths diverging in the dim light of her room. In that silence, heavy with possibility, she chose the latter. No fanfare, no fireworks, just a small, deliberate step forward. With shaking fingers, she dialed the number of a therapist Marta had slipped her months ago during one of their interventions, scheduling an appointment for the very next day. The voice on the other end was calm, professional, a lifeline extended without judgment. 3 months later, the transformations were incremental. Hard-won victories etched into her daily routine, rather than sweeping overhauls. Alessia had secured a stable position at a mid-sized design firm in the heart of Milan, where her talents were finally channeled into consistent projects, branding for local startups, illustrations for editorial pieces. She arrived on time each morning, her portfolio rebuilt through countless solitary nights hunched over her drawing tablet, fueled by herbal tea instead of heartache. The wall calendar, once a grim ledger of losses, now hung unmarked, a blank canvas symbolizing fresh starts rather than endings. Her friends returned gradually, tentatively at first, like birds testing the air after a storm. Sophia sent a casual text about a new art exhibit. Others followed with invitations to low-key gatherings. Marta, ever loyal, extended an olive branch in the form of a weekend trip to Lake Como, where the azure waters and misty mountains promised respite. Alessia accepted without hesitation, no excuses or last-minute cancellations. Their conversations shifted from crisis management to shared dreams, laughter echoing over shared meals without the shadow of her dependencies looming. She still hummed Amore Mio on occasion, the melody drifting through her mind during quiet moments. But it had transformed into mere background music, a pleasant echo rather than a desperate lifeline. Standing on the platform at Milano Centrale station one crisp morning, train ticket clutched firmly in her hand, Alessia caught her reflection in the grimy window of the departing carriage. For the first time in memory, it didn't crave external validation. It stood on its own merit, flawed, yet resilient. Today, I choose me, she thought, the words a silent vow etched into her soul, a promise to nurture the woman staring back. As the train pulled away from the platform, the spires of Milan receding into the distance like fading memories, Alessia allowed herself a genuine smile, not for the benefit of anyone else, but for the person she'd painstakingly begun to become. The journey ahead stretched out uncertainly, laced with inevitable pockets of loneliness and doubt, but it was unequivocally hers to navigate. And in that ownership, she discovered a profound truth. It was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment below. I'd love to read your thoughts. You've been listening to Lilith Sanctum. Until next time.